I know that you have quite an impressive personal collection of like rare, out of print, first edition African books.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to know where that passion and that interest came from for collecting and putting together such a nice collection.
Yeah.
I know I'm always bothering you about, okay, what's your latest find? What is new? Where did you buy it? What is your most valued book? I know I'm always bothering you about it. So.
Do you know what? Let me just, so I did just buy.
Okay, here we go.
I did just buy a collection of antiquarian books. Now, antiquarian, for those who don't know, is a Ghanaian writer whose book, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, was his flagship breakout book that was published in 1968. And his books are actually very difficult to come by, even in Ghana, which is the ironic thing. Like, people seem to think that, you know, you're in Ghana, you should be able to get books by Ama Ata Edu, Aikwear Ma, Ama Darko, you know, whoever, Yajesi, Tai Selassie, all these being Ghanaian writers. But it's actually very difficult to get Ghanaian writers in Ghana. That said, it's very difficult to get Aikwear books anywhere unless it's The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. So he moved to Senegal, I think in the 80s, and he started his own publishing company, which is called Parank. And so he publishes his own books, the back catalogue of his own books. And like I said, his books are just very difficult to come by, especially the early ones such as 2000 Seasons, Fragments, Osiris Rising, which was the first one from Parank. But I managed to just buy, like I said, 4 Aikwear books that are signed, no and that come with letters that he'd written to the person that he'd gifted these books to, and other things like that. And so I'm very happy. I'm very happy to have that collection.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. Okay, jealous.
You know, the thing with collecting African writers is that African writers don't have the same value on the market as we know. And that is a market problem. That's not a problem with the quality of the African writing and African writers. So in a sense, that's good for people like me who are collecting these books, because if I was trying to buy, for example, a Virginia Woolf or, you know, whoever, obviously I'd be paying through the nose for it. But because African writers and African writing is not as valued, it's still, you know, it's still a lot of money, but it's not as much as it would be if it was a Western writer. So that says a lot about, you know, the industry that we are working in, but it also quite works for me as well.
So when did you start your collection?
I started it about 2 years ago. And I can't even remember why I started it as such. I think it was because obviously I put most of my books into the library, and so people were borrowing, and you know, every time somebody would borrow, my heart would sink, because I would think, is this the last time that I'm going to see this book? And a lot of times it was, especially like there was a Teju Cole that I always talk about that was signed by him, Open City, which I'd actually come all the way from Copenhagen to Brussels because he was giving a talk, and he signed it for me, and he signed it something like, you know, dear Sylvia, thank you for coming all the way from Copenhagen for this talk. And so really it was special to me. Somebody borrowed that and never brought it back. And I learned from that never to lend books that are signed or that are, you know, have some value, and maybe I should keep some for myself. So it was in that moment that I decided that I would collect books that you can't get anymore. I mean, I think the idea of African literature as being something new, as something that began, you know, in 2 stages. One stage would be with Chinua Achebe, that people like to say it began with what's it called? Things Fall Apart in 1958. And then the other one is with Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie in the, I don't know, what was it, late 90s or early 2000s, when Purple Hibiscus, early 2000s, I think it was 2004 or so. So people like to think that African literature began at either one of those 2 points. And obviously it goes much, much further back than that. And so when I started investigating more fully, that's when I started collecting the works.
So you mentioned your collection, right? And you also mentioned that you have a new space for the library now. And you mentioned something about a museum.
Yes.
So can you elaborate a little bit about what that museum will have inside, what it will be about? what will be happening? What's the meaning of it?
Yes. So I'll talk about the new space first. So the previous space that we were in, the lease expired at the end of actually September 2019, but I extended it until the end of December 2019. And we had really outgrown that space and outgrown it quite quickly, to the point that there was no more shelf space. And I had like 1,000 or more books in my home. And it was clear pretty early on that we would need to move. And so when the lease expired, actually probably about 6 months or more before, I was looking in earnest for a new space. And ideally I wanted a space outside of Accra, because Accra is a very cosmopolitan, hectic, busy city, and it's not really conducive for a library and a residency and those kind of things that I wanted to do. But it became very clear after a while that I wasn't going to find anywhere where I wanted to find it. And so last month in January, I began looking around Accra, and thank goodness pretty quickly I found somewhere which is absolutely perfect. It's a house. It's a residential library. This is what it will be now. It has loads and loads of shelf space, loads of space for books. It has 2 rooms as well that will have special collections and Ghanaian writers only. One thing I've been very conscious of building up is the Ghanaian writers collection, and that's definitely worthy of its own room and taking pride of place. As I say, it's the Ayi collection that I've just managed to acquire. And so in terms of the museum is really to highlight these out of print and rare and first edition and ephemera from African and African descended writers. So for example, with the Ayi Amar collection, with the letters that came, the handwritten letters by Ayi Amar that came with these books, it would be awesome to be able to display these, because it tells the story of not just the writing, but the man himself. And it's not only Ayi Amar's ephemera that we have Kwame Nkrumah, we have Ghana, My Autobiography, first edition signed by Nkrumah, and there is a whole story behind that one as well. And, you know, it's got letters with it as well. We have the original manuscript as well that the publisher sent out to newspaper editors asking for it to be reviewed from 1956. So yeah, all these kind of things that are worthy of display that we just did not have the space to be able to display them fully. And so that's what the museum aspect of it will be about. I'm not sure if that will be able to be fully realised in this stage of where we are at the moment. I definitely see it as a 3-phase approach. So the first one, being the Libraria that we had for the last 2 years, the second one being this residential library and archive, and then the third one being the museum.
So when you say residential, does that mean people can come and stay at the library?
Yes.
Like rooms?
Yes, you can, and actually you can come and stay in the library. So there are 3 rooms upstairs, which we will be renting out on Airbnb and doing writing residencies and all kinds up there. And we're actually naming the rooms after different African writers. So the master suite is called the Amata Edu suite. And I'm not going to say what the other 2 are, because yeah, it might change. It might change, but I'm pretty sure that the master suite is called the Amata Edu suite. So yes, please come and stay in our Amata Edu suite at the library.
I've taken note.
Yeah, good. You can read up on all, you know, we'll have her whole collection there, and yeah.
So will you be able to borrow the special editions, or is it more like looking at them, a bit like the British Library?
Exactly.
You can look at them, but you can't take them.
Yeah, definitely not. You can't take them. Not after the experience with, you know, the Teju Cole and the other books that I lost. Yeah. So you can come and look at them. You can come and reference them. You can come and study from them, but you definitely can't borrow those books. But everything else in the main library you can borrow.
Amazing. So in terms of cultural relevance and social relevance, what do you hope to achieve with the new space and the whole concept around it?
In terms of cultural relevance, definitely it's what I was saying before, in terms of really highlighting that African writing and African literature is something that has extended from way beyond that we think it started from, and that it's something that belongs to us, and it's something that we should take pride in, and it's something that we should learn from, especially when we're trying to develop writers for today. It's good for them to be able to know that they come from a long tradition of African writers, and this is what people before them were doing, and this is where they are today. So in terms of cultural relevance, definitely it's about knowledge, and it's about knowledge production, knowledge dissemination. And then in terms of the social aspect of it, definitely, like, as I said, with the old library, we had lots of readings, lots of talks, lots of debates, lots of events. It is a social hub as well as a cultural hub. And now we have the space to be able to do all kinds of things, which is definitely a blessing.
I can see how excited you are. Me too. I'm like, oh my God. So in terms of the outreach, are you going to continue on with it?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know, the library space itself, it's a subscription library, so people pay to be a member of it. And that is actually really important to be able to fund and subsidize the outreach work that we do, because without that, I mean, it's obviously everything costs money. And yeah, the outreach work is definitely continuing to be an integral part of what we do. I like to call us a private library with a public mission, and the outreach is the public side of what we do.